Greetings, blessed beings. It's Dante here. I'm here with Atitlan. You can maybe see better if I do that for a second. There's San Pedro volcano. It's a couple days before the eclipse. My lighting's a little bit funny. That's better, maybe. You can't see the volcano though. I like to be out here by the lake. I want the lake to be included in the videos, but somehow the lighting is always off. You can't ever fully see me and the lake, but we're doing our best. So we have a solar eclipse coming up in a couple of days. Solar eclipse in 0 degrees Cancer, which is conjunct as well the North Node, and is right before the summer solstice. So this is a really powerful moment. The closer the eclipse is to the solstice, the more charged this is. The electromagnetic field of the Earth is a little bit wobbly, a little bit more open and receptive during these times of solstice and equinox. At this point, the solstice is the furthest tilt the Earth goes on. So the northern hemisphere is the closest to the sun. The southern hemisphere is the furthest away from the sun. I'm here in Guatemala, so the days get a little bit longer. You know, the days are almost nearly 12 hours sun, 12 hours night all the time, but we get like a little bit more around this time. I'm sure people are enjoying the summer despite being in lockdown. What does this solar eclipse bring us? So in Cancer, it's all about the energy of nurturing, of love, of feeling, of sensitivity, of creativity, and those themes may be brought up to the surface. It depends on where Cancer lies in your chart. If you are a Cancer, or if you have Cancer as an ascendant, or if you are a Capricorn, this is going to be a particularly intense and almost life reset. An eclipse is kind of like a reset button in general, where we kind of let go of the old and start the new. And Cancer is a very sentimental sign. Cancer is very concerned with the past and our upbringing, and Cancer is kind of how that energy that has brought us to this point is still alive within us now. So Cancer is cardinal water, and you can imagine, you know, the same water that flows at one point in the river is all the way up at it's also connected to the source of the river. So Cancer can see everything from this point as connected to something back then. So if people come back into your life, or if you feel a call to kind of tap back into those who have been a part of your journey, this is now a very perfect time to do that. Behind us, we've got kind of fixed water, Scorpio like me, but I mean, sometimes it moves, right? Anyway. So I'm looking at the chart here, and the biggest aspect that is occurring, besides obviously the sun and the moon conjunct in 0 degrees Cancer, this is Quincunx, or in conjunct, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, Quincunx, to the Saturn in 0 degrees Aquarius. So Saturn coming into Aquarius is a bit of this, you know, our lockdown, all of these intense, more confusing experiences that have come about in these past months. So many concerns of what the future holds, and kind of in this sci-fi, almost Orwellian time frame on Earth. It's very much connected to Saturn in Aquarius. Now, Saturn is now retrograde and going to move back through Capricorn. So Saturn is where restriction shows up in our life. Saturn is where we are faced with restriction, limitations, rules, and Aquarius is all about society. It's about the big picture. And in its long-term goal, Aquarius is really about egalitarianism, creating an equal playing field for all. And as Saturn comes into Aquarius, we're seeing this kind of happen with this sort of demand for equality. And now Saturn is going retrograde, and we'll come back through Aquarius later in the year. So for the moment, what this can feel like is Saturn in conjunct, or quincunx, the sun and the moon. Our sun and moon really want emotional connection and creative expansion and nurturing, yet there's this restriction upon us. So quincunx is it's not a square where there's a conflict, but it's kind of like a neutralizing force. It's an awkwardness. It's one force kind of getting in the way of the other force. So we can see here the restriction of Saturn is kind of making us feel as if we can't nurture, we can't reach within. And it's important to use this time. Computer might get too hot. How do I do this? Use this time to find the ways that we can nurture ourselves despite the limitations placed upon us. So Saturn in Aquarius is also about, technology. Aquarius has a lot to do with technology. Can we use technology to nurture each other? That's my intention, and I'm finding it working. At the same time, even though I'm connecting with so many people and supporting a lot of people, I feel like the technological interface kind of gets in the way a bit of this more nurturing quality. So as much as we can, if we can surround ourselves with loving people, Cancer season really loves that. Where'd my mouse go? So also another major aspect of this is Saturn, the moon and sun with the North Node. The North Node in Gemini. North Node has just finished moving through Cancer. Now in Gemini, it's kind of on the cusp. So we have a bit of this cusp of magic energy. In Gemini, how the intellect and the words move into this more nurturing quality. So to an extent, this is very much directly here in Cancer saying, hey, I'm Cancer, I'm a new archetype, I'm bringing to the surface this need for nurture, connection, expression. That we also have that Gemini kind of fringe North Node there, who is, again, making things a little bit uncertain. It's hard to really know. Gemini sees things from every perspective, so the full, complete truth that is unchanging is a bit hard to pin down for Gemini, and we're going to have that energy continuing through the next 18 months. So the moon and sun are also conjunct Vesta, and Vesta is quite literally what we are invested in. It's all about where we commit ourselves, what we're meant to nurture, things we're meant to let go of, what ignites this inner fire within us that keeps us impassioned in life. And now Vesta is moving for a while through Cancer, and the sun at the next eclipse will be directly conjunct with Vesta. So there's a lunar eclipse on July 4th, or July 5th on the other side of the world, and Vesta is really highlighting through these eclipses, we need to put our energy into caring for each other in changing times. And it's right in between Mercury, who's also in Cancer. Mercury just went retrograde, stationed and went retrograde a couple days ago. And Mercury retrograde is a time where ideas and commitments and planning and communication may be a bit off the wazoo. And those aspects, the mental aspects of our being, really need to undergo a more deeper retrospective action, kind of turning ourselves inward, turning ourselves in. And in Cancer, Mercury can make us very emotional, very kind of contemplating what it really means to care for ourselves. Those themes are really up, what it means to express ourselves. And it's not quite conjunct the sun and the moon, though with the next eclipse it will be in the orb, very close conjunct the sun. So, or actually maybe right on top of the sun. I'll talk about that later. And so Mercury is also having some action here that is causing us to go deeper inside and see what it really means to care. Okay, back to Saturn for a second, because we have Venus trining Saturn. And Venus, by this eclipse, is almost complete her retrograde motion through Gemini, which is all about, new ways of learning and finding how we are experiencing love and pleasure through this more intellectual pursuit. It may have been a very challenging way, as different ideas can kind of press against our hearts. When Venus goes retrograde, it's like the goddess of love goes into the underworld, which can cause just a feeling of a lack of love or a discordance of love. And it's there to teach us how to love more. So this Venus retrograde trine Saturn is kind of like, well, okay, we're facing a new world. We're in lockdown. Now, what does it mean to really nurture love within us, to ignite love within us? And it's kind of bringing this more airy aspect to the quality of love, and seeing things from higher perspectives brings us to ignite into love. Because if we are just committed to one perspective and not seeing the whole picture, it can kind of bog us down. Uranus sextile Mercury. Back to Mercury. Uranus and Mercury are kind of like different octaves of a similar vibration, having to do with communication and innovation, new ideas. So Mercury going through Taurus is restructuring our entire value system on the planet, and Mercury in Cancer is creating the sextile relationship. So as we undergo new values for the planet, new ways of relating to Earth, Gaia, Taurus, then we are also finding new ways that we can nurture and connect to support that. So that's a cute influence, I think. They're not all that bad. What we do have then is, Neptune and Mars are still in those degrees of Pisces, the third decan of Pisces. This is actually close enough that it creates a square relationship to the sun and moon. So we still have this kind of influence of potential deception and illusion, though this can also be an influence of aligning our will with our greater vision, because Pisces is also the visionary. It's where we get the vision for the future and we tap into our creative imagination and see things in a very spiritual, idealist light of beauty that can ignite a great unconditional love. So we have to make sure we're aligning our actions. Mars is all about our actions. We're still aligning our actions with our vision. That is an important theme of this eclipse. And it can feel as if there's this friction between what we want and what we are feeling and the actions we know we need to take. But if we choose to take them anyway, and we choose to take actions aligned with our greater spiritual vision, then there can be a very powerful transformation. Speaking of Aquarius and Saturn and new restrictions, there's the police patrolling the beach because we can't swim in Guatemala. Thanks to the police. You can get coronavirus if you swim in the lake. It's very dangerous. This lake is filled with coronavirus. And even sitting by the beach, this is, where I live. This is our property, so it's cool, but if another spot on the beach you would to go and chill out, you could get in some trouble. Hey, I don't know what's up with this world. Mars and Neptune are also sextile. Pluto, Jupiter, and Pallas Athena in Capricorn. And Capricorn again with Pluto and then Saturn going through there. It's restructuring and reforming everything related to Capricorn. So the hierarchical model, the structures of society, the ways that we work, the ways that we relate, this level of our value system is going to continue to be reevaluated. And we can see Saturn going back through Capricorn as kind of like, it may really start to be those moments when the economy really crumbles. The world economy really undergoes that intense and harsh restructuring. We may find this time is kind of sowing the seeds for that. And when we have Mars and Neptune sextile that, we have to keep in our vision, what is our future going to be like in a world with a new value system where maybe our financial currency means less. How do we cope with that? We've strived so hard to become independent, though now we might have to learn what it's like to be interdependent on others when the way that we've learned to live doesn't work. And for many, this will actually be a good thing. For others, this will be a great challenge. So right now, the sextile is asking us to have a vision for what it's going to look like when all of this financial thing changes and transforms. What else are we looking at? Even, yeah, Mercury is at a point opposing the Pluto and Jupiter to an extent. Within 10 degrees is a pretty wide orb, so the mind may not be on board this whole financial reset, though that aspect of care within it is really important. I keep coming back to that. Now, looking at this in the Mayan calendars, this eclipse falls on the day of 13 Kawak. And, well, it's happening in the night, so it's kind of in between the day before, which would be what, 13 Kawak, 12, it'll come to me, but it's not. So it's kind of in between. Though in the other side of the world, where this is actually happening. So the eclipse is moving through, from Ethiopia to China. So we can see the eclipse in Ethiopia, some other countries in Africa. I don't remember. Yemen, Oman. I love the names. Saudi Arabia, and then Pakistan and India. And actually, 0 degrees Cancer is also the Mars of India and Pakistan when they were founded. So there may be some sort of a intense reevaluation of will for those countries. The next eclipse is going to go through the United States on the 4th of July, so that's going to be interesting for that part of the world. Anyway, 13 Kawak is like 13 in the Mayan calendar is always a completion. It's always coming to the end of a Trasena and transforming, connecting to spirit. And Kawak is the storm that creates fertile soil, but also stirs things up. It can destroy some things in its wake, but it's always planting the seeds for new soil. So the storm is also considered the energy of the midwife. So we're giving birth to something with this energy. And in the galactic Mayan calendar, it's yellow rhythmic seed. So let's look at what does that say? The yellow rhythmic seed. Where'd it go? I organize in order to target, balancing awareness. I seal the input of flowering with the rhythmic tone of equality. I am guided by my own power doubled. Interesting, the rhythmic tone of equality is coming up for the eclipse because we're seeing Saturn go then into retrograde. We're going to have all of this chaos before Saturn moves into Aquarius with Jupiter, and that's the first time in 600 years there's a Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in air signs, and then for the next 200 years the conjunction will be in air signs. Air is about reaching upwards to spirit and communicating, and again, Aquarius is all about equalizing things. So we are in this rhythmic tone of equality for the eclipse, and that theme is so present with us. seed is all about planting our seed. So we're both getting this catalytic new soil and an importance of planting the seed, which is always important on the new moon anyway, though this one is particularly important. So now I will get into a little bit about the next upcoming lunar eclipse, because there we can see some even more interesting things. So with the lunar eclipse, the moon will be in Capricorn. Right now, for the solar eclipse, the moon's in Cancer, where the moon is domicile. So the moon is in its own natural belonging place. The moon is very connected to Cancer. After all, Cancer is the waves of the water, the movement of the water, and the moon is what generates that. So it's a very intuitive time, and it can be a time where we get, again, foresight. Mars is moving away from Neptune, so this is the important time now to align our action with our vision. And yeah, the moon in Capricorn is in its fall, so, or detriment rather. It's a place where the moon doesn't feel so well. Capricorn is very practical and goal-oriented. The moon's all about feeling and emotion. So we can see that the lunar eclipse may be one of greater challenge, especially when we have the moon lining up with all of those Jupiter, Pluto, Jupiter and Pluto specifically. It's not quite in the orb of Pluto, but I would say it's close enough, all within that Capricorn energy. So the moon's kind of, highlighting what emotional hit is it taking us that our world is restructuring when we come to the lunar eclipse. And as the lunar eclipse moves through the United States, it really seems to be a time where, the dark is shining there, and this may be a time where the United States stops becoming a world power, and it's hopefully quite likely that the politics changes. We have to kind of stand up to make that happen. Astrology doesn't tell us what will happen. It only frames how we will experience the moment and what we can do with those energies. So again, United States in a Pluto return. Not many nations survive their Pluto return. So we have to really look at what our values are moving forward. What else do we see in this chart? Then Mars and Chiron are conjunct, and they square to the Sun. The Sun is conjunct Vesta and Mercury. So Mars is going to be moving over Chiron a lot. Chiron in Aries is a very powerful placement. Last time Chiron was in Aries, we had the countercultural movement, and there's a new sort of revolution starting with Chiron and Aries, and it's a long-lasting influence. Mars behind that may bring some true fire to those revolutionary movements that are happening, and it may incite even greater conflict. Mars and Chiron opposing the moon, Mercury and Vesta, it can feel like there's this wounding and there's this drive that is against our own sense of self, who we are, what we stand for, and what we're invested in, and how our mind is so much identified with this in the moment because Mercury is there. That could be quite a challenging, well, that will be quite a challenging influence to face. And Mars is going to go retrograde in Aries, so we're going to have that Mars energy continuing. So these eclipses are really setting the stage for the events that are proceeding from this point forward. And well, we do have Venus Venus is still in that sextile. That's kind of nice. And Uranus is sextile the moon and is trine the moon and sextile the sun and Vesta and Mercury for the lunar eclipse. And so Uranus is kind of in a good position. Uranus gives us this ability to innovate and to adapt to the changes. So Uranus is helping our emotional body and our mental body adjust to this intense transformation. And even though Uranus itself Uranus isn't quite in retrograde yet. The other planets will be. Mercury's still in retrograde at that point. Luckily, Venus won't be. And again, the sun aligned with Vesta at that time is really asking us to invest deeper into ourselves, invest deeper into our emotional well-being, invest deeper into creative exploration, and see the importance of that, because really this Cancer, in its highest aspect, we can see as understanding we are all one world family. And our creative expression can help us deepen into that energy and open and expand into it. So Vesta and the sun together are kind of asking us for that when they align during that powerful lunar eclipse. And I get a sense of a lot of apprehension with the lunar eclipse. I think with the solar eclipse, we're getting a lot of downloads that may be very supportive for us in gaining a clear vision of how we're going to move forward. And we may understand that we're going to move forward through even more of this chaos that is present. We also have in the background, continuing as a long-term influence, Pluto square Eris. Eris is this chaos energy, and Pluto is, it's about death and rebirth. So it's a dance back and forth between the death and rebirth and this chaos. And all of this is moving us in a new direction, and it isn't comfortable. It's not comfortable times on the planet. And what I notice is, like, if you get yourself too deeply entrenched in the collective mess, even if you're very passionate about standing for that change, you can enhance the conflict and the division. And all this Cancer energy is just reminding us of the importance of sustaining balance in our emotional body. When we, try to fight against something or push for the truth or for change in a very resistant way, our emotional body gets distraught through that process. And even if we're standing for something true, we lose our own integrity and abilities to show up in the ways that we can. So the Cancer energy is bringing us into our own personal communities, into the places that feel the most nurturing for us, and understanding, the most important thing is, like, well, we want love in the world, we want love in our lives. And if we really want to experience that, we have to give love. The more we give, the more we're open to receive. If you don't give love freely, you cannot receive it in return. And I see some people feeling quite a bit alone and isolated. And, I want to question to all of those people, how much have you given love? How much love have you freely poured out into the world? Do you pour your love like water and trusting that there's an endless source flowing to you, like an endless river? Do you know that the drought never lasts forever, and more water, more love is going to flow? The more that I give, the more I have to give. It's the way that I live. It's what I'm living for. A little hippie song, but it's so super true that we have to give the things that we want to receive. And if we are holding on to love or holding in love or waiting for the right moment or waiting to receive that love before we give it, we are kind of blocking the flow of that energy. And we have to trust that the more we give freely, the more that energy is going to return to us. And those that we give that energy to is really important. And Cancer asks us to really examine if our relationships are equally nurturing to us and nurturing to others. Though the idea of unconditional love is basically really, you know, the more you open your heart to give, you receive the gift of opening to spirit through your giving. So never hold back your love, because the world really needs it now. More than ever, we really need it. And when we do see Jupiter and Saturn aligning in Aquarius with the next eclipse thing in the end of the year, that is a huge signal time to really create the new Earth, to create an equal playing field. And between now and then, we may see the chaos of how things are rearranged and like shaken, stirred, and exploded. And it may not be pretty, though we need to use this moment to recognize what is coming. We're going to get more of this crazy COVID-19 stuff. And in the meantime, we're creating our New Earth communities by nurturing those who matter most to us and allowing ourselves to receive that nurturing in return. So set yourself up for success in the new time by using this nurturing, loving family energy now. We are one family. And find your, some people have been talking about your apocalypse buddies. Apocalypse isn't the end of the world, it's the beginning of a new era. And this new era is going to be so beautiful. I'm so excited for it. And it's something that I've been, in a way, preparing for. As so many spiritual teachers have said, the time is going to be coming where people are needing you and people are ready to change, and it won't be pretty because your awakening hasn't been pretty. I didn't find spirituality and light and love through ease and grace. It was through a lot of chaos and conflict in my family and my personal life that awoke me. So that's what's happening in the world, and it's a spiritual awakening, and we can make really good of it when we find those who ignite our heart with the most love. And that's the invitation now, along with everything else that I've said. I hope this has really helped you. I'm doing astrology readings, especially for this eclipse, if you want to see how this affects you. And again, the channeling live stream will be right before my camera always cuts out at 32 minutes specifically. But yes, the channeling live stream will be on Saturday at believe 12 Mountain Time. I have to ask my host if she's okay with moving it an hour, but I think that'll be lovely. And as always, thanks so much for tuning in. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and pass it along. So much love and blessings to you.